Welcome to Still Untitled, the Adam Savage Project. I'm Will.
I'm Adam.
And I'm Norm.
Hello, gentlemen.
Good morning,
Hi.
gentlemen.
As you're listening to this, it's probably June 30th for you, but it's a holiday week for us. So we're actually recording a few days earlier. I was looking at June 30th and I was wondering, should we talk about movies? And I didn't realize June 30th is the 25th anniversary of the release of Apollo 13.
Wow.
5 years. Oh my God.
25
Oh, crap.
years.
I'm so old.
Oh yeah.
Which
man.
then because earlier this year it was the 50th, 40th anniversary.
It was the
40th.
No, 50th anniversary of Apollo 13.
The actual mission.
Of the actual mission.
Right.
Yeah.
And then but then 25 years. So more time technically has passed since
The movie came
the
out.
movie and the movie and
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, so
Yeah.
here's
And we're closer to Jesus than Jesus was to the pyramids. Yeah.
look, Adam. The pyramids weren't
Perspective.
real; they were just focusing the spectral energy into the Earth. The thing about the Apollo 13 movie for me was it was the first time that I saw, I mean, Jurassic Park, obviously you saw a movie with CG and the CG looked good and it blended in, but you could still tell it was CG, right? And those shots in Apollo 13 where they had like the rocket zooming by the camera and all that stuff, you couldn't tell that those weren't practical shots. I couldn't at the time.
Yeah.
And that was a real moment for me.
Also, I loved that the story of making the movie became one of the stories about the movie, right? That they actually filmed for days on the Vomit Comet, that the zero-G scenes have that movie goes to show that no matter how much you have great designers and great animators and wonderful art directors getting this stuff right, nothing equates to doing the thing for real in camera.
Yeah.
yes, and they shot documentary style. It's what an interesting document because as a docudrama, as a dramatization of something that happened in the collective consciousness, we conflate the imagery. When we think of the mission, it's hard to separate the mission now from Tom Hanks and Gary Sinise and those shots of shots.
The one thing that is the missed opportunity, maybe he was already too old, but a young Jim Lovell was a ringer for a young Kevin Costner.
That's right.
And
that's who he would have, pegged.
Like brothers.
I mean, it's funny because it's like the right stuff, right? Like Ed Harris and John Glenn. I've met John Glenn in person, and I still picture Ed Harris in Right Stuff when I think of John Glenn.
Hey, so as a slight tangent to this, Apollo 13, in addition to the wonderful Kevin Bacon and Tom Hanks, has Bill Paxton, the late and the great. And I've been catching a lot of Bill Paxton in movies.
Ooh.
Well, so obviously I watched Aliens twice during the lockdown, but I keep forgetting until I see it that Bill Paxton is one of the three punks that Arnold Schwarzenegger takes clothing from at the beginning of the first Terminator film.
At the Griffith Observatory.
And now the thing that I'm looking forward to watching that I have not watched, and I've heard it holds up, is Near Dark.
I've never seen that.
Oh, Catherine Bigelow's first film, Lance Henriksen, Bill Paxton. And Bill Paxton, if I remember correctly, does a kind of a proto Jack Nicholson as a vampire performance.
Wow.
Yeah. And I mean, it for all the talk of how wonderfully Christian Slater did his version of Jack Nicholson for Heathers, what I've been told is that Near Dark totally holds up. I'm kind of curious about that.
Definitely obviously gone too soon, but so many iconic roles that were so different. Like when you think of what is the iconic Bill Paxton role, you think of Aliens. He did Big Love and complete polar opposites, and Twister, right? If you talk about those stages of his career, I mean, it's very few actors have that range that then when you think of them, it's so hard. Like Jeff Daniels is another actor, I think, in the same category where he can do Dumb and Dumber to Newsroom.
Right.
Yeah.
Newsroom or The Hours. I was lucky enough to spend about an hour and a half chatting with Bill Paxton at Comic-Con a few years ago. We talked
Wow.
about it after he passed. And he was delightful, really, really funny and sweet. And I wish I could remember what movie he was making at the time, because I said, "What are you working on?" He goes, "Well, I just worked on this movie," and I can't even remember who else was in it. And he goes, "But you know what?" He said, "They gave me the best role. They didn't realize it, but they gave me the best part in the movie." And there was a delight in the way he said it that you could tell he was like, there's a journeyman aspect to it, right? I show up, and if it's great, it's great. If it's not, it's not. It's all fine. But wow, they actually gave me the most fun thing to do in this film, and I'm going to have a great time with it.
That's awesome.
I know.
Yeah. I mean, it's comic. I mean, as we're approaching July now, Comic-Con, they've announced they're doing their Comic-Con at home stuff, and I'm really looking forward to it. You know, the panels and whatever they're trying to recreate a lot of the experience, which I know so many of these conventions are figuring out, and whether or not it's something that becomes a standardized model. I'm sure whatever they do this year will be part of the DNA of conventions going forward, just as much as the real in-location events will still exist. But this is the big one, right? Like this is the one where 100,000 people, who would normally be in San Diego at the end of July, will be watching from home.
Well, everybody's trying to figure this out. We're trying to figure it out with Silicon as well, and the number of questions is jaw-dropping, right? Because it's not just like, how do you create unique experiences for the fans, but how do you create experiences that feel unique and collective? And also, these cons are served by the commerce that they represent, right? They represent commerce to the vendors, to the movie companies, and all of that. And, everybody, all these different cons that I was signed up to do this year that have canceled and pushed to next year, they're all going to be trying similar and different things online. And we're all sort of watching each other, kind of seeing what works and what takes and what people want. And it ultimately is about how to service the fan experience to do something that feels both unique and collective. So it's not just like you're in some booth in your own house, even though you are. How do we get that collective experience?
The smart conventions are also realizing, as you mentioned, it's not just the attendee that they need to service. It's also the guests. And what does it feel like for guests? Because you as a guest to conventions get a lot more than just the attending there and meeting the fans. Like, you have the experience of meeting other people. It's a fun networking event. And same with the vendors, right? It's not just the money that they get, and you can replicate some of that with online stores, but that direct interaction, that's even if you're not selling a lot at a convention, an independent artist in Artist Alley, they get so much motivation, and it's just fun happenstance that happens. How do you recreate that?
I mean, that it's impossible to overestimate how important that artist interaction is, both for the fans and for the artists. There were people that when I was going to Comic-Con every year, I would see once or twice a year at cons, and I would stop by and say hi, and we would have extended conversations, whether it was, a portrait artist or T-shirt artist or whatever. Like, those folks are feeling the pain a lot more than ever. So, like, if you have a favorite artist or a favorite shirt designer, go out and support them right now if you can, if you're able to, and buy a shirt, buy a print.
With them. I think when we shop for a lot of things online, like whether it's on eBay or even an Etsy store, right? If you go to someone's online store, an artist store, and you buy something from them, if it's transactional, yes, but I think we feel inhibited to engage with the artists on a personal level the way we would be naturally willing to do that in person at a convention. The welcoming table, and that's completely artificial. There's no reason why the artist wouldn't love a nice Twitter message or an email.
Oh, no, it's totally true. But also it's very platform specific. So, everyone buys stuff through eBay. And as I've said many times, eBay doesn't want the seller and the buyers to communicate. They want to make that as high friction as possible. Whereas Etsy, and I said this a couple of weeks ago during a piece to camera, and Etsy actually wrote to us and said, yeah, you got the core of what we're about. Because I said Etsy is really, they engender that conversation. They want the makers and the purchasers to have a relationship. And that relationship is so so wonderful. I mean, so it is very platform specific, and when you engender that notch past transactional, you get some really exciting things.
Yeah,
And,
I
and
think it's a fear of liability, right? Like, eBay, because they're processing so many transactions, they've built their communication system to service customer service, right? Like,
Right.
they think of their sellers as businesses and the shoppers as pure customers, and the communication tools are to solve the problem of a delivery not happening.
Do you remember the very first time you built a website? I remember the first time
Yeah.
I was putting a hyperlink into HTML, and I was chatting with my one of my closest friends at the time, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm not using a lot of hyperlinks. I want to keep people on my site." And I remember this has got to be like 95 or 96. And I remember thinking, even then, that's ridiculous. Why would you want a false economy of a walled garden? You've got the hyperlinks. You engender the goodwill by sending someone out to go get good information. That's what this is all about.
Yeah, if you give them something that they're excited about, they're going to come back to get the next thing that you're excited about.
Yes,
That's the whole point. That's what we do.
Right.
And then
man.
Firefox came out with tabs, and it made the whole point moot.
Yeah.
Tab browsing.
Exactly.
Netscape Navigator, Norm. Netscape Navigator.
Do you remember that was also in those early days? It was like, dude, it's Friday night. Are you going to download Netscape Navigator this weekend?
Oh my God. Updates.
I remember downloading some bootleg MP3s from like your board recordings of a concert, and it took 14 hours to get 40 minutes worth of incredibly low bitrate MP3s. Those were the days.
We're talking about movies that are 25 years old. We're talking about reminiscing about the good old days of coding HTML. Nothing makes us feel older.
Yeah. You guys should come on the Tech Pod. This is what we do. This is our bread and butter.
What's your segue, Norm? Bring it in.
Well, I'm saying that the thing that makes me feel old is having a kid.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Well, that's a good segue. We'll just wait another 5 years, Norm.
You know,
we got asked a question about how, now that we're all three of us are fathers, and you guys have been fathers for much longer than I have, how do you engender the maker spirit into your kids in a way that doesn't feel like you're pushing them into doing something that they're not interested in? And
right.
What have been your experiences with that?
Go
ahead, Adam. I was
okay.
just going over politing. Go ahead,
Endless
Adam.
loop. The chipmunks. I will tell you, this is a subject near and dear to my heart because I spent a long time thinking about it. And I spent a long time thinking about my parents because I am very grateful for the opportunities they put in front of me and the degree to which they listened to me and to my interests. And I tried to do the same with the boys. I certainly had other parents that were colleagues or compatriots at the time that I was raising the boys who had kids that were making films in their bedrooms and doing stop motion animation. And I would be thinking why aren't you doing that cool stuff? And I definitely brought the boys in here and taught them some shop practice stuff. But for the most part, I just kept on, each time they were interested in something, I would try and put more about it in front of them. That was it. That was just you want to play lacrosse? Great. Let's get some lacrosse stuff and you can play lacrosse. And we'll see if you want to play the guitar? Let's get a guitar.
I mean, that to me, the temptation is really strong to want to make your kid like the things that you like, right? Whether it's
of course
movies or video games or music or books, whatever it is, hobbies, and there's no life hack to making that happen. The way you make it happen is when they ask you questions about things, you take the time and sit down and spend that time and answer the questions, and you help them through the thing. And when they have more questions, you answer more. And when they don't, then you don't push them.
You mean you can't passively get them to like it by just doing those things, and they watch you and they see you as a role model, and then
you totally can. There's a 8-year period, it seems like, where monkey see, monkey do. And when my daughter sees me soldering, she's like, "Hey, what is that? What are you doing? Can I do that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, let me get the lead-free solder out or make sure the solder I have is lead-free," and then get into it.
And
but you can't force them.
No, you can't force them. And you really have to let them find it. You really like that's your job. And it also meant that I still have crap around me in storage and in other places of stuff that I got for them on Craigslist that they never used. There certainly were a lot of dead ends in that case, but frankly, they're both really creative, and they're both really excellent at executing in their fields of creativity, and they work hard. Then you can't really ask for more than that.
The Craigslist thing is really important because, like, for example, my daughter was very into basketball last basketball season. We watched a lot of basketball games. We went outside and practiced dribbling and passing and all that stuff in the backyard on the regular. And she was like, "Can we get a hoop so I can practice shooting?" I was like, "Yes, absolutely." And thankfully, somebody from her school, one of the other kids' parents, was like, "Hey, we're getting rid of a basketball hoop. Does anybody want to come get it?" And I was like, "Yes, I'll be there this afternoon." Picked up the hoop. Like, go to Craigslist, go to your like free next door section, stuff like that for that kind of stuff. And once they, don't go out and buy $1,000 Gibson guitar if your kid is like, "I want to learn to play guitar."
No,
find a used Yamaha on Craigslist, or go to the rental section at your music shop. And
it's so great for that low threshold to entry, right?
Yeah, and it's okay for them to switch interests frequently.
They're going to switch interests.
Yeah,
they're going to.
Also, those friends of yours whose kids seem to be really excelling, like, and why isn't your kid being that creative? That's just your perception from over here. Like, that they're going through all the same weird versions of crap that you are trying to bring that kid in.
The thing that's really, really hard and dangerous is the competition. Like the most, and Neil Dash posted on Twitter when my daughter was very young that like that one of his warning signs for a toxic parenting community is when you have certain labels applied to your kids, and when they're talking about how their kids are better than other people's kids.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, this is a good point, because I was looking at these Facebook groups and I was like, oh, this is weird. People are really weird about their kids here. I don't get this. But don't. Everybody's kids are different. Everybody's kids excel at different things at different rates. Don't avoid comparing your kid to other kids, because it's not good for anybody.
No.
Is my advice.
Try
to help your kid be a better person.
Is the school like? Is that something that you found or you're finding? Will?
Our schools haven't been naturally competitive. Like, our schools are very much about lifting up everybody and not pitting children against each other.
But schools are really competitive, and parents get really competitive about their kids and about their kids' achievements. That's
no, I get that, like the parent side, but does that pass on to, like, I have no sense. Like, the fear is that the kids themselves, like, we can deal with the parents, like, ignoring that. But, when a kid is at school, is the culture of education these days, the kids competing against each other, are they naturally competitive because of what they see?
We don't get that in our school, but we're in a kind of unique school situation in that we're in a parent participation school, and I don't think we do grades until after third grade. Like, it's not like you're getting A's and B's and C's, you're just getting proficiencies. I mean, the benefit of having the parents participating with the classrooms is that they know, like Gina and I know where our daughter stacks up in relation to the other kids and all the different things that are important. And the teachers are making it abundantly clear that the things we need to be focused on at age 7, which is how old my daughter is now, are things like basic reading proficiency and basic math proficiency. And those are pretty binary. They're not like if you're reading at a 5th grade level in 1st grade, that's terrific. But like it isn't going to change the outcome 3 years from now in a meaningful way.
Yeah. Right.
Which is the thing that did not happen when I was a kid, for sure. It's like, if you were in the reading at a higher proficiency level at an earlier age, then you got bumped up into different classes, and you had an hour with a special teacher every week, and there was not a lot of positive outcome from that. Yeah. Aside from the fact that I got to spend way more time with computers than most of the kids in my class did.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. At 18 or 19 months old right now, which is what Avery's at right now, he's starting to become more responsive, and you can tell that this is the stage where he's becoming less of an amorphous blob and something an emergence of a personality. And there's almost this rush. I don't know if you guys felt it, but I can't wait to see the person that he will become, right?
No.
But that doesn't happen. I mean, like, I realize it's not going to happen for years and years and years. And then when I think about myself, like the thing, I didn't become the person I was really until I found my people.
Right.
Look, I'm still not the person I'm going to be. I don't think. I'm 45.
And yet, there are aspects of thing 1 and thing 2 that I can see now that were completely clear and extant when they were 7 and 8. Norm, Avery's age is when my boys were close to that age, 18, 19 months. That's when I learned why lots of people have children about 2 years apart. Because the age that he's at is the age at which they start to get really fun, and you're like, "This is great. Let's do another one."
Yeah, yeah. Well,
all the clothes still work. Yeah.
And also, like, you can have, you're starting to be able to have, it won't be long before you're able to have conversations, and he'll start asking questions and things like that. And it's really, really compelling. One of the things you told me early on, I think, Adam, was that they understand you well before you think they'll understand you. And to talk, like, even if they're not particularly verbal at 12 or 18 months or whatever, to talk to them like they're human beings and not just parrot noises back to them and stuff like that. And like, we already were doing that, but once I started talking to our daughter, and like, it was really clear that she knew what was going on at a level that I had no idea.
Yeah.
That I would never have guessed before having kids.
So I'll tell you a funny story about the Maker Dad thing. So years ago, I was on the cover of Wired magazine for an issue that was about Maker parenting.
Yeah.
And after the issue came out, a good friend of mine who has 4 amazing kids, wrote to me, and he was like, "Thanks for making me feel like a dumb, bad dad with all your incredible projects you did with your kids." And I was like, "Dude, let me tell you, the article was literally all 3 things I have done with my kids. There's no more than that. I have done 3 Maker projects with my kids, and I wrote about them, and that was it. Like, there is no, like, that's not the tip of the iceberg. That's the whole iceberg."
Well, and so there's a thing that I don't know about, because my parents were definitely not the pushing, like, when I asked about taking piano lessons, my mom got me piano lessons, and when I was tired of taking piano lessons, and I was like, "I don't like this. I don't like the teacher. I want to stop." She was like, "Okay, fine." And part of that was that we lived in a rural area, so it was a 45-minute drive each way to the piano lesson place, and I'm sure she was thrilled to not have to do that once a week. But part of it was that her parents had done that to her and made her go through with a bunch of things, and she didn't want to force her kids to do stuff that they weren't excited about.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, I kind of don't know at what point I don't know how to tell the things you should. I mean, obviously practicing reading is a thing you push on, right? You want to get your kid to be a good reader. But, like, if my daughter wants to take guitar lessons or ukulele lessons, and she wants to stop after 3 weeks because her fingers hurt, I feel like that's a push on situation. Get her to go for a few more weeks, and then I don't know where that line is.
Look, I think that ultimately the decisions that you're making are such that you want your kid to feel the freedom at a certain moment to come to you and say, "I want to do this thing."
Yeah.
And you earn that by listening to the subtler clues, but taking into account their experience. I'm a total believer in saying, "You committed to doing it for 6 weeks. We're going to finish out this 6 weeks." I think those are great things to do. At the same time, grind, I don't believe in, obviously you guys don't either, is grinding them into the commitment until it loses anything, but it just becomes this, like, a policy.
Yeah, when she signed up for a sports team, we made her go to all the practices and go to all the games, even though she wasn't enjoying it. But like, I'm not going to make her do it again if she doesn't want to sign back up again. Obviously.
And you guys were active participants in those activities too. It wasn't just like, okay, you do it by yourself. Like, but you find, is that helpful? Like, is that one of those things that when you're doing it with them, or they feel like you are invested in it as well, that encourages them to be invested in it?
I mean, the thing I'm really aware of right now at 7 is that she really loves spending time with me and my wife more than anything else in the world. And that is
Yeah.
going to change at some point in the
Yeah.
not too distant future. So
Yeah,
I'm
that's
enjoying it
rough.
while it lasts. And
It's the
yeah.
thing that I keep saying. Both of my kids are cold callers. They call me rather than text me most of the time. And
Yeah, that's cool.
they're the only people in my life who do it. And it always is like, oh, cold calling is so weird. But I don't complain at all because there'll be a moment at which they stop doing it, and I'm going to want them to call. So I'm just taking each one as it comes.
Yeah. Enjoy it's easy to get stuck on what the future is going to be like and not just enjoy. Like one of my favorite days that we spent when my daughter was about the same age as Avery was I had been down. We'd been recording it at Tested, and I was like, I'm going to skip out early. Gina brought her down, and she went to go do something in the city, and I just strapped her into the chest carrier thing, and we just walked down Valencia, and like if she pointed at a shop window, we walked into the shop and looked at what was inside, and like where she could touch stuff, she touched stuff, and where she couldn't, she didn't. And we got an ice cream and shared an ice cream cone, and like it was just, she was just excited to be hanging out, literally hanging off of me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a like that. Enjoy those times. Enjoy all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the
Even the
thing
stuff
that
that
I
sucks.
always come back to, I mean, maybe this is being a new parent, is looking at all these things I'm projecting onto my kid and then reversing that and thinking about, well, my parents probably have the same thing for me.
Totally.
And so
Yep.
how do I bounce back these feelings upward in a way that, and reciprocate in a way that I, probably never did before I was a parent.
Yeah.
I became, I've said this before on the podcast, but when my daughter was born, I realized immediately what a monstrous asshole I had been to my parents in the teenage years, and probably into my 20s and early 30s, and sent him a note and was like, hey, like, yeah,
Sorry about that.
Sorry, I was bad. I apologize unreservedly.
If only time worked backwards and kids were parents before they were kids.
Look,
Nah.
so I've been sheltering with my mom, and it's been, normally my mom would come out to San Francisco 4 or 5 times a year for a weekend each time. We're in our 4th month together.
Wow.
And it's the first time we've lived together since my early 20s.
How is that going, Adam?
It's going great.
That's so cool.
I'm really grateful that she's with us. But it is also fascinating to live with her and really see at this stage in my life how I learned some of the social anxieties and coping mechanisms, where they all came from, right?
Yeah.
And also seeing the generational thing of what I learned from my mom. And thing two is one of my kids that's in the city, and I see him fairly frequently. But I see the progression. I see the progression from my mom's coping mechanisms to my coping mechanisms to my son's coping mechanisms, and it's progress.
Yeah.
He's way more advanced than I am, and it's nice to see that progress, because as parents, we're all going to fail. We're all going to screw it up, and the most important thing, really, and what you're really asking, what someone's really asking at the beginning of, like, how much do you support your kids make or drive, is, are you listening to the kid? Are you seeing your kid? Because that's the thing that they want. They need you to be seeing them as for who they are, not who you want to be, who you want them to be.
So this is like, so my father told me when I was a kid, he had a bad relationship with his father, and his goal the entire way through was to do better than his dad had done, do better with me than his dad had done with him. Mm-hmm. Which is I think an admirable goal. I was talking to my daughter the other day. This is not apropos of that at all, but I was talking to my daughter the other day, and we were talking about, she was playing Minecraft, and I watched her. Previously, she's gone and just started throwing bricks down, and then figured out what it was going to be after she had the building done. This time, she laid out a first row of bricks on the ground, and did like a plan of what she was building. I was like, hey, how'd you figure out how to do that? She's like, it just seemed right. I saw it in my head, but it's easier if I put it out on the board, and I can do it and get all what I was doing. I was like, this is fascinating. Like, this is a wonderful glimpse into how your brain works. So yeah, it's lovely.
Yeah.
Guys,
Yes.
I have to run.
Oh,
I
okay.
do as well.
Yeah, you guys
sorry.
have to go.
Can you do a wrap? Can we do a wrap out? Sorry, I have a call
Yes.
right now.
No
Yeah.
worries. Have a wonderful 4th of July, everyone.
Yeah.
Stay safe. And we'll be back.
Wear a mask.
Wear a mask.
Stay
Take
inside.
care of each
Thanks,
Bye, everybody.
guys.
other. Bye.
Bye.